If you like what you hear,
subscribe and follow us on Twitter at WTAE Podcast.
Thank you for joining us today. This is Worth the Admission podcast. I am B. Frank.
And I'm Travis.
And it's not bad so far. It's got the blue Power Ranger from the Power Rangers movie.
Okay.
Which is funny just because I watched Power Rangers because we were talking about how Red Ranger was Billy from Stranger Things. But
didn't even put those two together.
He looks so different, but also the same. I don't know. So the first two seasons of the Scream show, they had a different mask, which was kind of weird. This season returns the original mask from the movies, which up until a few years ago, I didn't know was referred to as Ghostface, but I guess that's the face of a ghost.
You didn't know that?
No, I'd always associated it with Scream and never as anything else. So I was like, oh, Ghostface.
Just never the character, just...
No, yeah.
Just, you saw the mask and just didn't have a name with it?
The Killer. That's the thing, it's always the Killer.
Just the Killer? That's it?
And that's
okay.
That's my one slight gripe about the new season is they refer to him as Ghostface. And I'm like, take me back to the old days when it's just the Killer. The Killer's on loose. I don't know. That's just me.
No, but that's what he is a killer. But his name's not the Killer.
Here's the thing, though.
Ghostface.
In any slasher horror movie, especially some of the older ones, how many killers are on the loose at once? Usually just the one.
Yeah, that's why you call him the Killer. That's why it's generalized.
Exactly.
That's not why everybody's named the Killer.
Well,
why would he be named the Killer then? Or she be the Killer?
Just refer to him as Ghostface until you find out who that killer is. No, I just refer to him as the Killer because it keeps it general. Ghostface.
Well, no, I guess you could use it as a terrible newspaper nickname, which is usually what they do in most of these cases anyway.
That's true.
Someone has a really terrible, catchy nickname, like in Dexter they did it, but even in just regular general slashers, they usually come up with something, whether it be a newspaper or something like that. But still, the Killer is the Killer in whatever slasher or horror movie for that reason.
Exactly.
Because they are the Killer.
It's like,
yeah,
here's the thing.
That's because they're killing people.
Yes.
That's not their name, though.
They don't know their name. Once you found out that, spoilers for the first Scream movie from 1994, that Billy was one of the killers. But
Ghostface.
He was one of the killers, and his name was Billy. He may have put on a Ghostface mask and been a Ghostface costumed killer.
But that's what they called the killer, Ghostface, because when he killed people, he was in a Ghostface mask.
He was never referred to as Ghostface in the first three movies.
Oh. Well, maybe it's what we all just thought of, and you were just behind the bandwagon. I don't know. At some point, he was named Ghostface. I thought you would have known that.
Whatever. Anyways.
Welcome to the episode. It's past the 4th of July. You have all your fingers still, which means you probably spent, instead of lighting fireworks off, watching Stranger Things. Which, the way Netflix worded it on that tweet yesterday, it seems like everybody watched Stranger Things over the holiday weekend.
40 million.
I'm 18.2 million finished it.
In the first 4 days.
I'm one of the... Yeah, I wasn't one of the first 18.2 in the first 4 days, but I did finish it. I know along with yourself. We'll get into that a little bit later on, but I love Stranger Things.
Speaking of...
we'll leave it at that.
Speaking of, like, opening weekends and stuff, though, Spider-Man Far From Home is past the $600 million mark now. It's been out 8 days as we're recording this, and it just hit $600 million. So if it keeps going, I think there's a chance it hits $1 billion. I would really love to see this one hit $1 billion.
I think it will. With Spider-Man, you're hoping that you weren't going to have too much of a drop-off. I mean, obviously you were going to lose a ton of people from Endgame to Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. But I think, how much did it open up with last weekend?
It was like 193 million worldwide.
Yeah, I mean, that's strong.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people still came out and showed support. I mean, 10 years ago, we were thinking that was impossible to see those kind of figures. And Spider-Man proves that, even on their... not having all the Avengers or all these characters, superhero movies still carry. Another job well done by Marvel. I don't see why it doesn't hit $1 billion though.
I have a thought though going forward, and we'll see more about this at Comic-Con, I imagine. I think we're going to see more crossovers and integration going forward in the MCU, because you've just put out this big movie that has every character in the cinematic universe you've created, and I think doing just a solo movie, I think, isn't really going to push it anymore. I think Spidey goes into like the next Doctor Strange movie. I think that would be really cool, and you start to see more of those small crossovers that help keep it all together but keep it fresh too.
Yeah, it's going to be the evolution of cinema.
Next Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 18th through the 21st. I'm excited for that. That's when I get all my big news.
Yeah, but see, here's the thing. You're super excited about all of this. There's only one thing I care about, and it's not Marvel.
The Bachelor?
That too, but that's another podcast, all right? No, I'm excited for Kevin Smith. I'm excited for his Hall H.
Yes.
I know we're not going to be able to see it. I know he said he is bringing a clip with him, but he says he is going to show the trailer, and they're going to put the trailer up. So hopefully sometime in the near future after Comic-Con, we'll be able to see the Jay and Silent Bob reboot trailer. I'm really excited about that. I mean, you and I are both big fans of him, so anytime we get to see a new project, it's like seeing one of your favorite artists make new music or anything like that. Mm-hmm. It doesn't happen very often, but when it does, it's exciting. So plenty of news coming out of there. I know we're probably going to hear quite a bit more. I think they said they're going to lay out
next 5 years,
the next phase. Yeah.
Or
that's the rumor. I'm just excited to see what they bring, because they still have Disney Plus and everything else that they might be able to show a new trailer from. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's
I think
so much that could be.
I think that is going to be Disney Plus is going to be saved for D23. I think Comic-Con is going to maybe get a clip from the Star Wars panel of The Mandalorian and Rise of Skywalker, and then I think Marvel will discuss and maybe show a teaser for some of their Disney Plus shows, but then they'll focus on their movies, because then I think the month after is the D23 Expo, and that's where Disney is going to lay out, I think, everything that Disney Plus is going to have when it launches in November. Absolutely everything, which is insane.
I mean, we have news and so much coming up. I mean, we have to think about Disney Plus along with, I mean, that's going to be all our holiday movies and everything else coming out at that time frame of year. And you're going to start seeing some of the Oscar movies. We start hitting this vicious cycle again of, we're start seeing all these great independent and low grade movies that are going to come out that hopefully you'll see in the next 6 months, for the Oscars. But I mean, we still have a bunch of movies in summertime coming out. Mm-hmm. We've got, Hobbs and Shaw, I think, is one of the last big ones. I think if it's going to make money, that's probably one that's going to.
Yeah, because as The Rock, Jason Statham, and is a Fast and the Furious movie.
Pretty much.
I'm curious how Netflix is going to do after 2020, 2021, because they have no intellectual property as of right now. And with Disney Plus, AT&T's coming out with their streaming service, Warner Media's coming out with their streaming service, and then you have Apple. You're really going to have to fight for it, whereas Netflix used to be the only market you had. It is now diluted, and Netflix has to take stock and think about what their next move is.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is going to be key for the next year for them. I mean, your biggest competition's coming out towards the end of the year. You're losing Friends. I know because that was a big thing that people all were up in arms with, because Warner's taking that back. I know also that Cinemax and HBO are coming out with a new app, which is called HBO Max. So they're combining,
which is still Warner Media
forces, I believe. Yeah, I mean, there's just everything's coming out within the next year. It's going to be watered down, and I think this is where you're going to see your major choice.
Yeah,
because you can't spend your money on everything.
I think we're going to see Hulu go down. Be? I think Hulu's done.
I think Hulu is going to be out of business soon. I think what might keep them in business is going to be the live TV, but the problem is everybody else has one, and you're going to have to be able to keep up, because nowadays with these live TV streaming, they've got cloud DVRs and things like that. I mean, they're becoming just as good, if not better, than cable. That's why so many people are cutting the cord.
Well,
So when
when I think about, like AMC, they have their own streaming service, and if Disney, Warner Media, imagine next year when Westworld is out, HBO releases it on their platform, Warner Media releases it on their platform, and it airs at the same time. I think we're going to see a lot more people just start hitting the streaming side, and because at that point, why do you need cable if you can get exactly what you need without it?
exactly, but I mean, what are you going to choose? Because Netflix is all we've really known. So is that going to drop off? Are you going to give Netflix more of a chance? Are you going to start seeing so many more of these new streaming services pop up and go, you know what, I would rather give that a shot more? And I'm not talking like Amazon and others that already have a built-in content where, they do have some of their original shows. And I mean, really, when you're going to like Amazon, you're mainly looking at their original product. You don't go there for what else is on there. You're usually looking for their specific, their Hulu, their Amazon Prime originals. With Netflix, they have that, but your movies are few and far between being very good.
Mm-hmm.
Your shows the good ones tend to run very short, and we don't get a ton of seasons of them, because we haven't really gotten anything that's going to go deep. I know even with Stranger Things, that's not going to go very deep. I think it only goes one more season or so. So when it comes to, yes, you're making, and you are technically a movie studio now, at what point are you going to have to make that jump to full, being full into with your actors and every bit of quality, and kind of trimming off the fat and not necessarily doing 200 movies a year and focusing on maybe 50 and being a more high grade quality than what you've been doing before? They're going to have to tighten up because they're not going to be able to keep spending like they do, because the well's going to dry up. I guarantee you, with a lot of people.
Yeah, I think there's a chance that they partner with somebody, but at the same time, I think they've got a year, because I think everybody's going to try out the streaming services to find out which one they like more. And obviously, you're going to have Apple users. They're going to get Apple TV. It's just kind of in their brain. It's kind of how we've been conditioned. Like if Samsung had its own streaming service, I'm sure I'd have that.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Apple really saw ahead of the curve and realized all these people are getting to their own streaming services. They're going to start taking it away from us. What's our answer to that? Make our own stuff. And as much as I just don't like Apple, that is something I think Steve Jobs would have done.
Oh yeah, no, it's brilliant, and I understand that. But you can't spend $10 a month here and $10 a month there because you want to watch one show. It's going to come down to the point where you're just going to start picking shows that I just can't watch that anymore. My problem with a lot of these shows and cutting the cord is going to be what's going to happen with TV rights and live TV rights. Are we just going to get everything? Because we're big sports people, you and I as well too. I mean, is it going to be to the point where you can't watch NFL unless you get, the NFL Sunday ticket, kind of thing? Or are we going to be to that? Because people aren't going...
Yeah, like prioritization.
It goes so much deeper than just what TV is, like TV shows. We're talking live sporting events. How do you get from one? Because everybody's got a different sport on a different network. I mean, taking your ball and going home now affects a lot more people because we don't have one place to just cohesively live, which was, DirecTV or Cox for us out here, or any kind of, cable provider that you have. That's... the whole game is going to change. And I don't mind binging shows, but there's sometimes where you don't know what to watch. That's the times where I fall back to like that 70s show is mine, or some people fall back on Friends,
Supernatural.
But people like just having Netflix. Why do I have to pay for two if I just want one thing? And that's when people are going to take and cut out Netflix if they don't have what they want or have anything that people want to browse to be able to watch. Because I feel that's what Hulu has right now. They just have a bunch of garbage movies most of the time. Every once in a while they do have a decent batch on there, but for the most part it's a bunch of movies that you go, I've never heard of these before, and it's nothing worth of your time. But I don't think that's going to help anybody in the next 5 years, or even in the next 2 years, because we don't even know what's going to be out there for us so, that we want. Because you could be 1 month I want Netflix because they might have something, or 1 month I might want Disney. I'm gonna hate this round robin, and also I don't want to spend $120 a month on streaming services. Because even though Prime, you get everything else involved. HBO is $15 a month, so by the time you buy that and Netflix, if you're doing like the UHD, you're already spending $30 right there.
It adds up quick, and I think Disney.
Not even doing live TV.
I think Disney is going to start at $6.99, and within 5 years, I think it's going to be up to $15 or so.
Oh, easily.
I could see them going $20 a month because at that point, I think the best way to have a streaming service is to set up channels within that service to make it easier to get to. Like, you still pay for the service, but you have a Marvel channel, you have a Pixar channel, you have this. Like, you have a general space that you can go just so that you can search through the Marvel movies, through the Marvel TV shows, stuff like that.
Yeah, so you would go into each in depth of each one.
Yeah.
Now my problem is with that, like, Disney is big. They own so much. Are they going to just make a central hub for everything? Because they could essentially do that. Take all of their stuff nice and neat and put it in one app. I'm not just talking streaming stuff for movies. I'm talking, are they going to bring ESPN in, and they have all of these other networks that they own and all these other things that their rights that they have to. They could bring everything in that they want. Are we going to evolve to that? Are we going to evolve to a certain point where if I wanted to watch a Marvel movie that was brand new, if I had a streaming service like them and I paid $15 a month, if I chose to pay an extra $10, could I watch it right now? Or even at some point, are they just going to throw those movies up instead of going to the theaters? That's what I'm talking about when we had our discussion last time. Yeah. The evolution of the streaming service in theaters. Everybody has their ball and goes home, and they play and they do their own thing, and they build their own houses, and popping out their own creative content, which is great. That's not a problem. But at a certain point, the money's going to stop being there, because with a streaming service, you're basically paying you're the advertiser at that point. Because on network TV, the advertisers are paying, they're paying to have screen time to advertise their product. You don't have that now. You have advertising in shows,
basic
but
stuff.
You don't have that anymore. We are essentially, us are paying for you to make these products or continue to make them.
Yeah.
And if, say, Fox isn't good and I don't like Fox's lineup, why am I going to buy the Fox app? Or if
Disney.
I want like CBS All Access, I know, but that's what I mean is how are these networks going to be able to survive?
That's true.
At a certain point, the more intellectual property and the more things you own, Disney, is what's going to make you last the longest. It's going to be who can continue to make the most fresh and new ideas or remake things that can still entertain and produce and move the ball forward in terms of cinema. Or not just in cinema, just entertainment.
That's true.
We're eventually
gonna kind of run out
of
things to do.
Yeah, but if Fox only has a certain amount of things, I guess, I'm talking like in terms of like TV.
Yeah.
Let's just say break it down from TV. There's only a certain amount of ideas that CBS is going to have versus Fox and ABC and all these basic networks. Now, when you move on to anything bigger, when I'm talking into like movies and movie studios, yeah, you have old back stuff and you're going to still have to get new stuff, but at what point are you going to start just putting your new stuff direct to video because you want to get those ratings? You want to see the people stream.
Because of the money that the theaters provide. You're not going to make $2.7 billion on your streaming service in 10 weeks.
Yes, but if you're able to get the numbers there, the numbers are showing a reflection of how many... It goes so much deeper than what you and I can break down, because, like, Netflix never for a long time brought out their numbers. Now they're just whipping out numbers when they want to, left and right, like this 40 million viewers. Even when they did it for Murder Mystery, people are starting to care about those numbers just as much. So now that they're caring about them, that's where your dollar amount and your figure goes to. That's what they're basing everything around. Eventually, maybe that algorithm is how well something does at the box office is going to change into how many eyes I can get onto my app and how much money I can pull in for this. It's going to become a dog-eat-dog world more than it already has been, because now we don't have a cool, nice little central place where we can, some older stuff, or maybe they put some new stuff up from each property. We don't get that.
Well, I will say that Netflix has a good property with Stranger Things, for sure. I mean,
Oh, yes.
releasing it on July 4th was pretty ballsy as far as a release. And, I mean, even a show like that didn't hinder, or shows that it didn't necessarily hinder, like Spider-Man's numbers in the theaters. You still had, even at 40 million people, 40 million accounts, times a minimum of $10 a month, that's $400 million just for keeping people in that month. So, like, when you kind of look at those numbers, it's not.
But that's exactly what it is, though. That's what you're looking for. You don't want that drop off. Because how many people buy it for a month, go, oh, cool, I'll binge something, and then I'll quit it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they want. They want you to sustain. And that's what I'm talking about. Is when you have these properties that you can keep making new things, or things that you didn't have that you can make that you've collected over time, that's what's going to keep you relevant, because people are looking for those new ideas, but people still love these reboots and these remakes, and I won't understand why. But if you have those and you have a backlog of those, you can go deeper. While other these people have to struggle to find these new and creative and innovative ideas, you don't have to do that. Disney can pull a laundry list of things 10 miles long versus other streaming rights, other streaming services, because they don't have enough of they haven't acquired enough things.
Yeah.
That's where I say it becomes survival of the fittest, because if you're not coming out with content, I'm going to go to this one now. And I think that's how people are going to decide. And I don't want it to have to be an every month thing where, do I want Netflix?
Yeah, do I want to go to this one? Do I want to switch to this one? Do I want to... Yeah.
That's exactly like buying a ticket to a movie. You have something that I want, I'm going to pay to go see it.
Yeah.
But if you don't have anything that I don't want to see, like even if you're a movie studio now, cool. Like, Disney's been putting out these remakes, these live action remakes. I don't want to see them, but I'll go see a Disney Marvel Studios, Avengers Endgame or Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
They're two same companies, but there's one I would see, one I wouldn't see. But it still keeps me in where I want to be. Versus, I honestly have no desire to see Hobbs and Shaw. None whatsoever. But I definitely want to see Spider-Man. Like, now you're taking me from one studio to the next. I'm giving them my money. That is a movie ticket. That is an account. Whatever it happens to be. That's why those numbers matter so much. That's why I say, when you have a huge number like Stranger Things, 40 million people, that means 40 million people watched. But it also means that you have people that wanted to go see this. They don't divulge to us how many new accounts wanted to just see Stranger Things or reactivated just to see Stranger Things. But the number of streamers, that's what's become so important nowadays. That's why those box office numbers count, and this counts.
Yeah.
It breaks down so much more, and I mean, that's just a general idea of what I believe it is.
Yeah.
But in terms of it's gonna just change the landscape, and I'm excited because I think it's gonna force people to be as creative as possible now.
Yeah.
And
you have to make it
creative.
count. You have to do quality over quantity.
Yep. And I think that's where you're going to trim a lot of these shows that, okay, they're okay. And it might be some shows that we really like that get cut. But if it has to be the best of the best, having 15 options one night and go, man, do I want to start this show? Do I want to start this show? Watch this movie? Watch this, that, the other thing? I can't... how many times have we sat and searched through Netflix for 20 minutes and you can't find anything? And we're like everybody else. Because sometimes you want to watch something old, and they have great old classic movies on there.
Depends what you're feeling.
I watched Caddyshack the other night because it was on there. And I was like, oh, cool, I'll watch this. And I've just like the other day, or at the beginning of July, they put The Hangover on there. We've watched Stranger Things. Like, that's just in like a Netflix comparison, but... I can watch anything I want, but sometimes you don't have those things, and you're searching. It's going to become so much harder for that competition because everything's going to be good. So when you want to sit down and watch something, your choices are going to be more, man, I've really been wanting to watch this. I miss that. Versus you only get that a couple times a year, like I felt with Stranger Things or Game of Thrones. These big TV events, or let's just say, for instance, on TV, or Endgame, for instance, for movies, like you have these big events that they get you excited, but those are so few and far between with everything else that goes on. There are still plenty of things that we like, but there's those few that just really, get you excited.
Which I think Stranger Things definitely did. I was really surprised that the last episode was an hour 20. For sure, I wasn't disappointed at all. I think it used the time wisely.
Oh yes. So before we get into it, it's spoiler heavy. We're going to talk about this pretty. We'll get in spoilerish wise because how can you not? So if you haven't watched it yet, watch it. Pause. Do whatever you need to.
Come back. Get like 20-something minutes.
Yeah, we'll be waiting for you. Don't worry. We'll always be here. That's why we're a podcast. So.
And now we're moving on.
Let's get into this. What did you think? Because I absolutely love the season. It had a different feel, just like every year has felt different. I mean, even in its own way, it still feels the same. You know, you still has that charm, but this season you felt them getting older, and it still felt as natural, and you still felt that cohesion with the group. And overall, it was hands down my favorite season. What did you think?
I really liked it. I thought it was better than season 2, just because I think the story and the characters were used better. Like, in season 2, I didn't really like that Elle was out of the picture until the second to last episode. And one of the guys at work said that he was glad that this season she didn't just come in and wipe the board like she always does. It was an actual battle, and I don't know, the characters did evolve. I still think I like season 1 better just because of how original that idea is. But I think this season really built into that world and on top of it and did a really great job. I do think there are only 1 or 2 seasons left that you can make of good TV. And that's one thing I've realized with shows like this. It's called them binging shows versus seasonal storytelling. Is something like The Flash is week by week because it's not just one story split up into 23 episodes. It's some different stories scattered throughout, whereas with something like Stranger Things, it's meant to be binged. The only reason the episode ends is so that you can move on to the next episode, so that you don't watch a 10-hour movie, you watch 10 episodes or 8 episodes.
Yeah, that's my one complaint. It was only 8 episodes. I really could have enjoyed more of this. Like you said, the storylines were all over the place. And I really enjoy that because they took their time, especially in these first couple episodes. It was very dialogue heavy. You didn't get a lot of action scenes like you got at the end of 4 and start of 5, 6, 7, and 8, which were a lot of action heavy and so many things happened. This season took its time to set up its characters for you to completely understand what was going on, so when they walked you through and they held your hand throughout the entire thing, like with Dustin's girlfriend, Susie, they talk about her through the whole thing, and then she comes together at the end.
Yeah.
And it was a great story arc, and I really liked that.
That was just something a really small. Adorable payoff, too.
Oh my, I love that. I love it the moment they put it in, because it was in a moment of peril, and it was in such a... I mean, they were driving in the station wagon down the road, and that monster is chasing behind them, and you were listening to them sing the never-ending story, and to me, it just felt at the right moment. It gave you that lighthearted moment with all the pressure, because that season finale, we'll get into it a little bit later as we move on, but it is fantastic. But there were just so many storylines. You had Elle and Mike, and you had Elle and Hopper, and then you had Hopper and Joyce, and you had so many of these people that interacted so well, and ones that you didn't even think that they would.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you had his sister, I forget his name.
Oh, Nancy.
Yeah, Nancy.
Nancy and Jonathan.
You know, that whole... The way they brought everybody in, everybody got a main story piece. I really did. I didn't think that there were any B characters as much this year. They felt everybody had so much screen time because the story was so pivotal. And really, it could have gone so haywire because it was so intricate. You were following stories and you knew they were all going to connect. But they all branched off so quickly, and then the story built, and then it really got pushed to that next level halfway through. And that's what I love. The pace got pushed about halfway through. And I would say the end of the sauna episode, when we had
Billy locked in,
3 or 4.
Yeah.
They had Billy locked in. But let's start at the beginning. Hawkins had completely changed and didn't change all at the same time. It was kind of nice to see everybody back to where they were at.
Yeah.
And
Joyce was back at the store.
I love. Yep, Joyce was back at the store. Hopper was doing his thing. Elle, we obviously seen that they were together with. She was together with Mike, and you could tell that in terms of that, you had seen they had grown up. And I like that they addressed that right away with, hey, we kind of don't play D&D as much anymore. And they kind of made that presently known. And it kind of made it like, we're kind of into girls too. And we're kind of into being teenagers. I think that's what made it fun.
It really brought it
seeing
to,
these little kids.
Kind of brought it down to reality on the personal side of the characters. Like, yeah, you had the, existential stuff, but I think the characters were a lot more grounded in this season. Even Elle was.
Oh yes, I love how they let her come out of her shell and be not just, they let her be a human.
Yeah.
And they let her experience. And I thought her character development is, we already knew she was a badass and she was strong. And they didn't try to pretend that anymore. They took, okay, you know that. Now we're gonna focus on the human side and letting her be a teenager for once. And what are the struggles with Hopper and him trying to be a dad to this, to this girl, this teenage girl now, and he doesn't really know what to do. And I like the tension with Mike and Hopper, and I kind of like how that story kind of progressed and played out.
Hilarious.
Yeah, oh man.
I will allow you to date my daughter.
Done. It made you laugh in so many parts, and it was so lighthearted, but the villains were different this time. I mean,
yeah.
I liked how they were brought a different angle to the story about everything was sealed, and now even in that very first scene, we see probably one of my favorite characters, Dr. Alexei, and you see the machine that they're using, and they're trying to open the Upside Down in this Russian lab, and I thought that was a really interesting element to take as towards like a villain or a cause for this storyline.
Yes, but we also didn't get a reason as to why they were trying to open the door. That's my only main gripe about this season is and maybe they'll touch on it next season, and that's part of next season's story, but knowing right now it's just they opened the door because they're Russians and they had scientists. And so I didn't quite understand why they needed it to be open. It just felt like, hey, we needed the Upside Down to be opened again. How do we do that? Boom, Russians. And so if they expand on that next season, I'm cool with it. But that's my only main thing from this one.
Well, if you would have watched the post-credit scene, they do continue in Russia.
Yes.
And that's what's very exciting. And that's kind of why I brought this up. That's why I brought the whole Russian aspect up. Because it was mainly about Billy, and it was mainly about these creatures, and we'll get more into that, because that's the main storyline, at least for our villains. Because we had our villains and we had our Russians. And I know we didn't get an answer quite to them. I think they're building to something so much bigger, and that's what I liked. And they show you in that post-credit scene, obviously they have something there, and obviously they have a portal
and
or
an
something.
American.
And an American, which is, we'll get into that later. I have no idea who it is. I don't believe it's anybody. Do you think it's anybody that we've met before?
I don't. I think
it's someone new.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I've seen speculation. I think it's going to be a whole brand new character. I think it's going to have something to do how they tie being in Russia all the way back to Hawkins, or get them there, or them, vice versa. I think it's going to be a whole...
Maybe it's Barb. No, she's dead. Barb's dead.
No, she's dead.
She's bred, Jim.
No, but I just think that it was interesting, and I thought it made reference, like, when they referenced Red Dawn, it made reference to the time in the 80s, and I think the hysteria on it is what kind of played to it. And maybe it may not be as big of a deal. We saw that it was. But they were able to progress their storyline to where next year we don't have to have this big old intro with the Russians. we know what they know, and now we're going to figure out why.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that because that wasn't the only thing. Most times with most shows that we are disappointed on through Netflix, that would have been the main bad guy, and that would have been it. But instead, we have Billy, and what is the exact name of the monster? I mean,
the Mind Flayer.
the essential, yeah.
Yeah, the first season it was the Demogorgon, just because that's the monster they were facing in D&D. Which, quick side note, every season when they played D&D has been a foreshadow of the final battle they'll have at the end of the season. Think, the more you know. Yeah, the Mind Flayer is the actual name. That's how they referred to it. And
it is a crazy thing. I'll let you explain it because the storyline with Billy really takes off, and I thought it was cool to see a B character get an A storyline.
Dude, he killed it this
so
season.
much more of a backstory that we got to him, and not just him, his into his past and the reason of so many things. I really enjoyed it, and I thought that's what made the ending so much greater.
Yeah. Well, like all last season, all you felt from Billy was, this guy's an asshole. Just straight asshole. And even though I like only maybe really cared about him a little bit at the end, because that's when we could really see Billy. The most of the season was not Billy. I think once we finally got there, I might have felt something, but for most of the season, he was taken by the Mind Flayer. And he was a beast. He fucking killed it.
Oh, absolutely. But Mind Flayer essentially takes over a body, and he essentially took Billy as a head to recruit, and he recruited more people. So he actually recruited the head, the cheerleader, which is actually Mike's sister. I forget her name.
Well, I guess recruited isn't the right word. He took them to, I think, a steel mill or a sawmill, and the Mind Flayer got up inside them.
But essentially, he was bringing people to them. He was bringing them to build an army, which he does a very good job. And what I like is you just saw bits and pieces, and all of a sudden it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's what I like about the Mind Flayer is what they were building is essentially this gigantic his gigantic version monster of his final self. Yeah, a flesh monster.
Well, and still extremely small in size in comparison. Like the Mind Flayer itself is, as we've seen, humongous. So this is only even a part
hundreds
of
feet
him.
tall.
Yeah. And that the whole scene of it being created, like we got a little bit throughout the first couple episodes that these rats are doing this, and then they're exploding, and then they're just kind of moving, and you find out that this blob of flesh is sentient, and it comes together to create this Demogorgon, and it's kind of scary.
It's so badass looking. It is.
It was a very well done scene, as far as tension.
Oh yes. But what I loved is, because I really did truly thought it was a great season, and not like what we talked about with binging. It's great because I sat down and I was like, I'm just gonna start, watch a couple episodes at a time. It doesn't. It draws you in. The soundtrack's impeccable.
Oh, it's beautiful.
It fits just such 80s, and there's music all the time throughout this. My favorite scene, or one of my favorite episodes, is in the hospital. When they go and meet when they go back to see Mrs. Driscoll, who was one who was being flayed. They actually went to go interview her because they were interns at the paper about these mice exploding and
eating fertilizer
all over the place. Yeah, eating fertilizer and being almost rabid. Come to find out that Miss Driscoll ends up being taken or being mind flayed by the Mind Flayer, and becomes this almost ferocious rabid being. And we actually see the scene with her, not her escaping, but also who has been flayed before. And it's just so intense because we see so many people that we've seen before in the show, or that we saw in the season, getting turned, and it just becomes so terrifying because now you don't know who to trust, and you're still learning about this creature even 3 or 4 episodes in, because for the most part you don't really see this creature until the end of episode 4.
Yeah.
Where they're all standing there at the end of the base,
And it's just
or Billy. Yep, and it's just that nice, that eerie music, that old timey 1920s music playing as everybody's just standing there. It was great, and as we got further along in that season, we see Dustin and his antics of the Scoop Troop, or well, that's what I'm gonna call him now. Yeah. Go ahead and talk about that, because
that was honestly Dustin and Steve's relationship is probably the most untainted, I guess. You know, in this during this season, as far as relationships that were there prior, because we get a spat between Mike and Will, and they end up, kind of making up, and Elle and Mike and Dustin and Steve don't really get that, and it's so much fun because they're convinced, and at first it's like, no, this thing is just like, oh, you caught something, and it turns into, no, like you were right, it's a Russian code for this, and that scene where Robin is looking around the mall and is like, I figured it out, that was really cool too, because it's like,
I love that.
It's underneath the mall. And it's funny because when I saw the mall in episode 1, I was like, well, that mall's not making it through the final battle, because it had to take place there because it was the newest environment.
Oh, of course. We'll get to that final battle, because that's what I enjoyed about this entire season. The battles were always bigger and better than what I anticipated. They really were. When the kids are trying to figure out if Billy has been mind flayed, and they go through this process because he disappears, his whole thing is he was going out to try and meet Mike's mom to bang her,
Mrs. Wheeler,
and because she was hot for him at the pool because he's the lifeguard, which I thought was he's so badass when he walks out and everybody's
like, what's up, Billy?
And then he's like, hey, lard ass, stop running on my watch or I will ban you from the pool.
Do you want to get banned?
And no, and he just walks off. And everybody applauds, and everybody continues to just have a good time.
Yeah.
I just thought it was funny. But we go and see him, and he's actually on the way to a hotel to meet Mike's mom when, boom, he hits something, and he wrecks in front of the mill. Come to find out, he was baited there so he could be mind flayed. That's actually the first time
I think that's the end of the first episode.
That is the end of the first episode. And that was the first time we actually ever saw any trouble. And then from there, it's really the downfall of what was left of Billy into being part of the Mind Flayer, because they're all connected as like a Wi-Fi network. Whenever there was which I thought was a really cool aspect, if one got hit, all of them felt it or within that area.
That was an interesting touch.
It was. Like, I thought it made sense in the final battle, but I also thought it made sense in the hospital when they go and see Miss Driscoll, when they're being basically hunted for their lives by the other members of the paper.
Yeah.
That aspect was great, but Billy, I just thought played that character very well. And anybody who was mind flayed, it was gruesome, it was disgusting, it made me want to turn away at times, especially when the rat just...
Yeah, when the rat exploded and then just started, like, flesh crawling.
They just pushed it. But being able to see Billy turn into this big badass or having powers of being mind flayed, when they go into the sauna to see if it's Billy and he gets out and they have this big battle sequence with Elle and she could have killed him, I just thought, oh, cool, they're going to find out and that's going to be the end of the episode. And then it wasn't the end of the episode. And then he got out and then they started fighting. That, to me, already felt something that could have been a mid-season finale to even a season finale if you were just trying to figure out who that was, or you're trying to figure out what was going on.
And it really
that
moved
battle was
fast.
way bigger than it needed to be, and even that whole hospital scene, which was kind of at the end of one episode, and basically kind of at the whole episode of 5 and a bit of leftover in the 6, I thought was really well done. And it was terrifying to see everything just turn upside down so quick, no pun intended. And seeing the kids apart, but all coming back together, and the beginning of episode 8 was
well, and that's
wonderful.
how it always, even the last 2 seasons, they each have their own storylines, and this season really, I think, helped perfect that way of telling for them, because we had like 4 or 5 different individual stories that were all part of this puzzle. You had Joyce and Hopper going to see if the Upside Down was reopened and all of that, while at the same time you've got Dustin, Steve, and Robin checking out the Russians, who are the ones that have opened the Upside Down, and then the mall, and you kind of get all this, and then midway through episode 7 they all come together, and you get to that big final moment, and it just feels so natural.
Yeah, because to me, like, Steve had a major arc this season, kind of being too old, hanging out with them, and that was kind of made relevant in the very first episode.
How many young people do you know?
Hang out with? Him not winning a fight and striking out, to him finally, like, beating the Russian as they're stuck and trapped downstairs, and he's been beaten and interrogated. He goes through hell through those last 2 episodes, essentially 2-3 episodes, and I just love how they all came together, because it was, to me, it felt better than any of the other seasons did, because they left Dustin right away. Dustin came back from summer camp, and then they said hi, and then they bailed on him, and that was it.
Yeah, and then we were off.
And they don't see each other till episode 8. But it doesn't feel that way, because you're watching so much of this when you go, man, you haven't seen all of these people together. It just blows your mind. And that final episode, I think, is the epitome of what TV should be. If you want people to watch your stuff, you need to make as good of an episode as they did. I know people love Game of Thrones and everything like that, but that holds a candle to that, because that story was just so well done. To me, it was meticulous. It felt so much bigger than it actually was. I mean, that last episode felt like a motion picture, and to me, I walked away so happy. I've watched the season twice already, and I've seen that season finale twice, and I still feel as great about it. I think it's heartbreaking. I think it moves the story so much more forward. I think it poses so many more questions going into next season, and that's what I want to see. What's going to happen with the fallout of Max and Elle? What's going to happen? They both lost somebody. You could see when they hugged each other, as, at the very end, that whole scene, when they're all kind of saying goodbye. Like, what's going to happen? And that's not our only question, is Joyce and them,
Are now
spoiler alert,
gone.
halfway through, she loses her house, and they have to move away. They moved out of Hawkins, Indiana.
Or she sold the house.
Or yeah, she sold the house and they moved. And what's going to happen now? We're going to see them, and they're going to be incorporated somehow. But we have so many questions. Are we going to have them answered, and those are going to be whole season arc things? Or are they going to be answered in that first episode? That's what I love about the show, is they'll take you one way, and then they'll move you somewhere completely different, and you're still okay with that ride no matter where they go.
Well, and I think one of the things that I liked is they closed the story that they wanted to tell, and then left like some cliffhangers and some questions. And that whole scene in the mall when they're throwing the fireworks at the Demogorgon, and then you get...
Oh, let's talk about that scene, because you can break all of that down, because I thought that was an excellent battle sequence.
Yes, it was. And as soon as I saw the fireworks in the mall, I was like, oh, he just said that they're just like dynamite. If you put them all together, that's being used. So the final fight's going to take place here. And so, and when they all started throwing them, and you had Billy basically just kind of, him and Elle kind of had a fight, but it was more him controlling the Demogorgon versus anything. And you also get to see that mind hive come back into play, where the Demogorgon would get hit and you see Billy go down. And
yeah. Well, I mean, what was in the episode before is called The Bite. And this is Elle gets actually bitten by a bit of that monster, and a piece gets lodged in her leg, and that's actually where a bit of that's the end of episode 7, the beginning of 8, where they're stuck in the mall trying to get this out of her, or they move to the mall to end this, and they're trying to get this out of her leg, and it's really gruesome, but she loses her powers and she's super weak at that point. So by the time Billy sees her, when they're running towards about halfway through that episode, it's Mike, and Mike's got nothing left, and Max doesn't have anything. I mean, there's just nothing you can do. Billy just took her by will, and when that whole moment where, well, let's go back. The Demogorgon is on top of the mall, crashes down while the kids are in there because Billy has chased them back in, and now they're trapped in the mall trying for escape while you have this gigantic monster essentially hunting two groups of everybody down.
Yeah.
Now, at this point, Steve and Dustin and everybody has taken off. They're going up to the radio tower. Joyce, Hopper, and his friend, I forget his name, the Russian.
Oh, Alexei.
I do. They all, yeah, his friend, yeah, not Alexei, the one they go to help decode everything.
Oh, yeah, the reporter guy.
Yeah, so they have him. They all go down to basically stop this laser that's trying to cut open the Upside Down, because that is what's powering this big mind flayer Demogorgon. And then basically the main villain for this whole season.
That's what's keeping it open.
And that's what's keeping it going, is the fact that the Russians somehow, some way, for whatever reason, are opening this portal, which is allowing all of this to happen. And they're actually trying to open a permanent hole, which would be very bad.
Very bad.
And we get this whole battle sequence in there where they're just using their resources. They're trying to fix and get their car unstranded because Billy has pulled their ignition wire out, so they can't start the car. They're stranded in the mall with this Demogorgon, and it looks very bleak. And the intensity of when she falls, they're trying to escape through the gap, and then it's searching through them in the store, and the balloon pops, and the Demogorgon runs away, and it's just so intense. And I loved that was its own scene, and to me, that was a big battle moment. But you had another one later on down the road, which one we were talking about, with Billy, where the fireworks are going off, and Billy has now taken L, and if L is taken by the Mind Flayer, it's pretty much game over.
Yeah.
Because now he can control L. And they have all of this battle, we have this heartfelt moment between Billy and L, where she talks to him, and now she's just describing in her dreams, because we got to see a lot of her going into people's minds in this season.
Yeah.
And spying on Mike, or seeing where Hopper is, or trying to find where people are.
Seeing where Billy came from.
She actually got a chance to go in to find, when she was trying to find Billy, or find the Mind Flayer, she happened to find Billy, and she got into his mind, and she saw the way he grew up, and his mom, and everything, and how good his life was before it wasn't, and how badly he was treated afterwards, and why he was as mean as he was. And we just have such a great heartfelt moment when he turns on the Mind Flayer and battles them off, essentially, so everybody can escape.
And gets shanked in the heart with a tentacle. And I'd say more the heart, less the heart than, I guess, the center mass of the body is gone now. So he definitely didn't make it.
It was bad.
But that was a really cool shot when he's looking at Max, and you see Billy, like actual Billy and not the Mind Flayer, and he's like, "I'm sorry, I didn't want to do this," like kind of like, "Forgive me," and then turns and just arms out and catches the tentacle, and it's really badass. So that was that shot was just amazing.
So Billy is dead, unfortunately, and that's really, I liked his character, I liked his arc, and I liked the redemption at it, because it still made you feel good about it. And then, do you want to go to because I won't lie, I did tear up at both parts of the last bit of this episode. And I'll go through the first part. The only way to stop this, and we get through all this plan, and we get to the very end, and they have to basically turn two keys on this device that's opening the Upside Down that the Russians are using. Now, throughout this whole season, Hopper has been being chased by this Russian hitman who's looking for Dr. Alexei as well as Mr. Hopper because he has found he investigated too much into this laser and what these Russians were up to. And so now we get to this point where we have our final battle sequence with the Russian and also Hopper. Hopper gets his ass kicked pretty much this entire season by him and finally gets the upper hand, and it had his moments. But finally, I love just that last line where he goes, "I will see you in hell," and he kicks him over and he goes right in the machine and destroys the machine, but in the process puts a barrier up between him and the exit, allowing him not to escape. So what does Joyce have to do? But she has to make the impossible decision and turn the keys which will destroy the machine and vaporize everybody in that room, which is killing Hopper. And it was heartfelt because we all knew it was going to happen as soon what was coming. But I think the way they wrote him off and the way they did him was with so much respect and love, because I thought his character, the arc was so great because he was such an angry, drunk, bitter man at the beginning of the season, and to see what Elle had done to him and the reflection with him and Joyce and finding happiness really felt so much rewarding even though he passes away and he dies in the show, it for his character so rewarding.
I don't think Hopper's dead.
How did you not think he's dead?
There was a ladder right behind him on that, I don't know, balcony thing by the laser, and there was the opening to the Upside Down. I'm just saying, there's a chance. Now,
you think he went into
the reason I think he went to the Upside Down is we didn't specifically see him dust or explode into dust like we did with the Russians that were in there, but I think we now have to go back to the Upside Down, and I think, especially if next season is the final season or if season 5 is, I think the final battle takes place in the Upside Down, and we find out that Will is going to have powers similar to Elle, and so they go to the Upside Down to rescue Hopper and find this as well. I think that would be really cool, mainly because one of the guys at work,
it writes Hopper off, but it writes him off for right now.
Yeah,
but he doesn't also have to be in he doesn't have to be in a ton of the season if you're searching for him.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know he was hit or miss on returning to the show. Not that he didn't like it. I just know that he had other projects that he was doing, and I don't know if they ever inked him to a long-term deal or not through whether season 3 or season 4 or 5, whatever it happened to be. But in its terms in the show, you don't see him because that's heartbreaking enough. But as we've already talked about with Joyce leaving, and obviously with all the fallout with essentially Hopper being gone and you're not seeing him, that heartbreaking scene at the end as they're cleaning out the house and you see Hopper's uniform and
the note, which
yeah,
Nathan told me or told us at the house that the actress who plays Elle hadn't read the letter until that moment, so they turned the camera on. She read the letter, and at the same time, they played the voiceover from Hopper, and so that is her actual emotional response to that.
Well, because it's depressing.
Yeah.
It is a note. In the beginning of the season, we have this conversation in the very first episode with Joyce and Hopper. He was trying to get advice from her about Mike and Elle dating because he feels that Mike is taking her away and she is slowly losing that child innocence and becoming a young lady. He's not quite ready to accept that, and he handles it in different ways, and he handles it in his anger in his way. But what we get to, and I think what was I thought was such a great scene, and I was awfully sad. I mean, just depressingly sad. Is her sitting there, and it fades into Hopper sitting in this cabin, writing down, reciting the speech he was going to try and make to Elle and Mike about boundaries. And having boundaries. You don't have to be here all the time, because apparently Mike was over there all the time, every day, and never had a day off for 6 months. He said he was over there every day. And just him writing from a perspective from a father to a daughter about growing up, or any parent would having a kid growing up and losing control of innocence and childhood and growing into a young adult and turning into an adult and your responsibility. My goodness, it is sappy. It'll make you cry. Because if you're invested in the show or invested in the characters,
you cared about Hopper, you cared about Elle.
What he had to say came from a place of realness and a place of heart. And I think even if you're not a parent or anything like that, if you're just looking at it from the two characters' perspective, I mean, that's the payoff. Because the last line that he has, he says, for goodness sake, for your dear old dad, please, 3 inches. You know, it's something along those lines. But keep the door open because that's the reference. And I just thought that was played so well. Kind of like I Love You 3000, like Endgame-ish. Like it kind of felt like that, kind of like, we're going to take this little bit right here.
And we're going to make it one of the best lines in cinematic history.
Yeah, we're going to really sell this line. But to me, that was just a great payoff for his character. And whether you're right, and that's what happened, you know, or he's still alive, I take it as such as we don't see him and we don't know. You're probably right because he is a main character. But I thought how if they exited him off, if he wasn't coming back, you have done your job.
Yes,
like,
absolutely.
You have voyaged this character to where there's nothing more that you can do for him, and I'm okay with peace with his character. Just kind of like when Opie died in Sons of Anarchy. Like I had that just calming, like, you know, when he takes that beating and, you know, he gets jumped and killed in that last pipe shot and he looks up at Jax. Like, just that, like, I'm okay. Like, that's kind of how that calmness I feel of, like, that reassurance with Hopper saying this speech was kind of like, okay, like I feel okay with this character dying. It's not like a Walking Dead where just someone dies and you go,
I have to deal with this now.
Move on. Like, you're going to feel the mourning process, and I feel the character... The age for this character to have this death of someone that important to her is going to really make a big impact in who she becomes in this next series in Stranger Things 4. Now, overall, go ahead.
Speaking of Stranger Things 4 real quick, I have to throw this out because if I don't, I think she might actually kill me, but Cole's girlfriend thinks that the next season is going to be out next November, because we've had Christmas, we've had spring, we've now had summer, July 4th. They said that they're going to be back together in November. She thinks that the next season is going to release next November, or 2.5 years November. So, something to toss out.
Yes, because they talked about it there, and then they said, well, if you guys want, you can come, we'll talk about her coming up for Christmas. So, yeah.
So
that's be interesting.
Yeah, all around, I think the season was done really well. I think it was a ballsy move, keeping people in on the 4th, but at the same time, you could watch half the episodes before you barbecue and do fireworks and stuff for the day, or you can do what Nathan and I did, which is watch all 8 episodes and then go immediately to bed because it's 10:30 at night.
Well, when we watched Stranger Things 1, I binged it through midnight. Like, when it came out, I watched it at midnight the night it came out, and I watched it overnight till 8 a.m. the next morning. Because I was like, oh, let me see this. I watched the first episode, and I was hooked. And I love Stranger Things 2. To me, I rank it Stranger Things 3, 1, and 2, if I was going to do it. Because I thought there was a pointless episode in 2, which automatically knocked it down.
And was it the whole episode about Elle? And it wasn't that it was. I mean, I don't think it was the best episode of the season, but it came in. You had this really high tension of, oh my god, this is going to be intense and great. Okay, we're going to take a break for an hour, and just show you. And I don't
like letting up from the pedal, because this year they set you up dialogue wise for 2.5 episodes. When that shoe dropped at the end of 3 and into 4, you kept the pace from 4 on, and it just got steadily more as you found out the bricks of information your action picked up. And then for a show like that, I was really engrossed. To me, yes, it's a 4th of July show because it takes place around that time. But honestly, it is a great summer watch. It is a great TV show. It can be watched at any time. And to me, if you're someone who misses Christmas and watches Christmas movies in July, if you're missing summertime and winter, you can watch this, and it's going to put you right back at that time at the beach and everything like that. So to me, Stranger Things, well done. Netflix, this is the reason why people will pay. This is the reason why people will pay your money to be on your streaming service. I have one last thing to shout out. New Anthony Mackie movie on Netflix. Drop's going to be dropping Friday. So this is going to be the 12th? Friday the 12th? All right?
Yes.
A new Anthony Mackie movie called Point Blank. It's a really cool cop drama. It looks like a thriller. It looks like it's going to be a normal standard Netflix movie, so don't expect anything great, but I do think you're pulling a better actor in. I think Ethan Hawke's in it as well. No, Frank Grillo.
Oh, okay.
I don't know, because Ethan Hawke is another one in other things like that, but it's Frank Grillo and him in like a cop thriller. It looks good. I would give it a watch if you're looking for something this weekend. If you're not binging Stranger Things, if you're looking for something else. Next week we're going to be off. Homeboy, Mr. B. Frank, is going to be in Ohio. So we're going to be doing a big Comic-Con breakdown after we get back. We're going to do trailers. We're going to do, for me, we're going to be doing Kevin Smith breakdown. So we got stuff to look forward to coming up. And we have some surprises for you, hopefully coming up in the next couple months. Hope you guys stay tuned for that. But other than that, that's all I got.
With that being said, I am B. Frank.
And I'm Travis.
And we are worth the admission.
See you next week. Take care.